everyone, my name is Laura, this is my channel Laura's Little Library, and welcome to today's video, which are all of my anticipated reads for the first half of next year. There are so many good books coming out next year, and I'm just super excited, and I'm really excited to share them all with you. However, because it is going to be the beginning of the year, there are plenty of books that still have not yet been announced that will come out in the second half of next year. So I'm really just going to focus on books through kind of June and July, because I'm sure there are going to be so many more amazing books announced for the second half of the year, even though I do know a fair number of them that will come out in kind of that August-September time as well. But I will cover that in a part 2 of this video for next year. Much later in the year as we have more details on things, but for now we're just going to focus on the first 6 months of 2025, so let's get started. On January 2nd we have A Language of Dragons, and this is by S.F. Williamson. So this follows our main character who just really wants security for her family and her younger sister, so she goes to school and she studies dragon languages. So, dark academia vibes already, but then there's more in the synopsis. Dragons are flying in the streets, and there are lots of protests until next thing we know, a civil war has broken out. Then our main character finds herself taking this mysterious job where she finds that she's actually a code breaker because of her knowledge in the dragon languages. So, I'm obviously super excited for this because if you know anything about me, you know that I love fantasy and language-based fantasy especially, and it's perfect because it's coming out January 2, which will be right before Onyx Storm, which I will get to, of course. So I will be getting ready to be in a dragon mood, and I'm just so excited. I'm obsessed that there's going to be another fantasy book with a main character who is passionate about languages. It's also kind of historical, as I believe it's in like 1920s, like 1923-esque, so there we go. Then on January 7, we have a couple of books, the first being Mystery Royale, and this is by Caitlin Cavalencia, and this is said to be a cross between the Inheritance Games and Hotel Magnifique. I've read the Inheritance Games, but I have not read Hotel Magnifique yet. It is on my TBR, but basically the idea is that we have our main character whose mother told her, stay away from the strange things. But when our main character is left all alone with her part-time job and she has to care for her grandmother, she ends up finding a bunch of invitations in these random weird places, and so she decides to take up those invitations, and it's to join some sort of game, kind of mystery game thing to compete for the inheritance of this old man who just died. And this man who just died, his inheritance is some sort of illusion or magic or something like that, so it's a competition to gain his illusion magic. I can definitely see how this is a merging of those two books of the fantastical, magical, illusionist lifestyle of Hotel Magnifique with the kind of games you have to play in order for a chance at inheritance, so I'm very excited for this one. Also on January 7th is No Place Left to Hide, and this is by Megan Lawley. Megan Lawley wrote one of my favorite books of last year, which was a thriller book called That's Not My Name, and so she has a new book coming out, as I said, on the 7th, and this follows this high school senior whose life is perfect. She's getting into her dream school, she's celebrating graduation, she's gonna talk to her crush at the bonfire, but she does have some sort of incident, dark history in her past. And when she's going home from said bonfire, there's a truck that is following her on a secluded road. And so I think I don't know if she gets in the car, but I kind of think she does get in the car. And so it's a question of, what was this incident? What's happening now? Is she gonna survive? Is she gonna keep her dream life or not? Like, it feels kind of basic in terms of like thriller plotline, but so did That's Not My Name. It sounded like a pretty basic plotline to me, but I ended up loving it, so I am super excited for Megan Lawley's new book on January 7th, No Place Left to Hide, so we'll see how this one is. Then 1 week later, on January 14, we have Grady Hendrix' new book, which is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. I am really excited and intrigued by this one because it's in the 1970s and it's a home for girls who are really young, unmarried, and pregnant. So, you know, those were real things where, yeah, if you were unmarried and basically under the age of like early 20s, although, you know, most commonly 14 and up, they would send you to these homes where you can hide your pregnancy or be forgotten about, or, you know, just have it taken care of in some way. And so we are following our main character, who her and her friends that she meets at this house as they are all pregnant and alone and too young, and they are given a book of witchcraft by the librarian at this house. And so interesting things happen, I guess, with young pregnant girls and witchcraft. I could definitely see this one probably having a lot of trigger warnings though, especially with there being pregnancy and themes of motherhood. I do worry that there is going to be some sort of magic plus miscarriage pregnancy themes. I don't know, I haven't read it, hasn't come out, but I'm going to read it. I love Grady Hendrix's other books and I'm very intrigued by the premise of this one. But if you're a fan of Grady Hendrix or other horror thriller books, but this is a little iffy, it comes out in January, so not too long. And then I will get my hands on a copy hopefully and read it, and I will let you know what the trigger warnings are in case you also want to read it. On January 16th, we have The Baby Dragon Cafe, and this is by Amna Qureshi, and this is going to be a cozy romance. I am so excited. It sounds so cute. It is Grumpy Sunshine. Our female main character runs a baby dragon cafe. It's a cafe with baby dragons, and it's a place for their owners as well. And then your grumpy love interest is a gardener, and he only cares about his plants. You know, he's not really big into other humans, but he has a baby dragon who is just misbehaving up a storm. So he walks into our main character's cafe and he's like, your cafe is struggling, my baby dragon is struggling, I'll pay you to train my baby dragon enough money to keep this place afloat, okay? So they come up with that little deal and arrangement, and oh my gosh, it just sounds so cute with the baby dragons and the cafe setting. Grumpy Sunshine, and he's a gardener. I love it. I feel like you don't see a lot of male gardeners because they're either like farmers or like lumberjacks or something like that, but not like gardeners, if you know what I mean. So I am so excited. I love Grumpy Sunshine. I love little dragons, cozy romance. Oh, I'm so excited. So January 16 for this one. And then the last book I have to talk about coming out in January on the 21st is, of course, Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the third book, Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and now Onyx Storm is coming out. Like I said, book 3 of 5 in this series. So if you don't know, it's gonna be pretty easy to find out because I feel like BookTube and Bookstagram and Book Talk, everyone is just obsessed with this series. The third book is coming out January 21st. If you haven't pre-ordered your copy, I would probably recommend doing it just based off of what happened, not even with Fourth Wing, but Iron Flame. I don't know if sales would be this crazy with Iron Flame just because I feel like less people liked it as much as Fourth Wing. So I don't know if those people like didn't like it enough to continue, but I get the feeling most people will. So I have my copy pre-ordered. It's the only book I have pre-ordered for 2025 because I don't do pre-orders really, partially because I'm moving around almost every year, and also partly because I just book budget. I get too excited to go and buy books in person, but I knew for this one I would want to have it pre-ordered so it can be on my doorstep on January 21st so I can get reading it that day. Man, I hope I don't have classes that day. I probably do, but oh well. So now we can move on to the February books. On February 4th, a book called Capitana by Cassandra James will be coming out, and this I think is going to be a perfect summer book because our main character is trying to become basically a like sea hunter, kind of like a pirate hunter almost for the empire of this fantasy fictional world. And so, but her parents were pirates and they were actually executed when she and her sister were young. So she already has it hard because of that reputation of her parents. But when this nefarious pirate comes from, I don't know, retirement out of nowhere, comes back, I guess, and captures the queen, this is our main character's moment to shine and restore the queen to her rightful glory. However, her academic rival also has a similar idea of going after the infamous pirate and trying to save the queen. And I think the two of them actually team up, but there's only, one person that can have all the fame and glory of it. It seems to be rivals to lovers, pirates. So it seems like a perfect summer read, but it comes out on February 4th. Then moving on to February 11th, we have Emily Henry's Compendium of Lost Tales. So this is by Heather Fawcett, and again, this is the third book in a series, just the Emily Wilde series, and this is such a cozy fantasy series. I highly recommend, if you have not started reading it, to please do so. The third book, like I said, is coming out February 11th. I don't want to spoil it. I think I accidentally spoiled it a little bit in my last video if you haven't read the second book, so I'm sorry. But basically, the first book is about Emily Wilde, who is an academic and a professor at this posh British university, and she wants to write the first encyclopedia of all fae. And it means all fae, like everything from little fairies, brownies, and gremlins to the high court, Sealy court fae, and everything in between. So she goes to Scandinavia and she starts writing her encyclopedia, only to be bothered by her academic rival, who is such a slacker and gets a ton of credit for all the work that he doesn't do. His students do it for him. So it is a slow burn, such rich, cozy fantasy, and it's honestly perfect to read in the winter time. I wouldn't say it's a summer or an autumnal read. I would say it's definitely winter or spring. So it coming out on February 11th, the third book, is perfect. Also on February 11th, we have The Forest King's Daughter by Ellie Blake. This is the first book in a new series called the Thirstwood series, I believe. And this says it's good for fans of Sarah J. Maas and Holly Black. It is an enemies to forbidden romance. So our main character is obviously the Forest King's daughter, and when she was a young child, she met the Demon Prince. And he actually put a ring on her finger. They were cutesy together, right? So he gives her a ring. And instantly when that happens, they declare war. Like the Forest King and the Demon Queen declare war on each other. Time jump many years later, the Forest King's daughter is one of the fearsome warriors in the army, but she uses the ring that she has to slay the demons, right? And so the Demon Prince needs to correct his mistake and get that ring back. And so they both end up having to go to this fantastical place that they believed only belonged in stories or was only true in stories, in order to correct this mistake and stop the war. And I think it's just going to be such a cute romance, and it has really strong storytelling vibes, like even in the synopsis beginning with once upon a time, and the idea of storytelling and the forbidden romance along with the enemies to lovers. It very much sounds like it's down my alley, and I am just so excited. Hi Ashi! Now we move on to the books being released in March, and the first one on March 4th, on March 4th is The Scorpion and the Night Blossom, and this is by Emily Wen Cho, and this is a new book, or it's a book starting a new duology called the Three Realms duology. So you are following a main character who there is some sort of war or something going on, and so she trains to become a practitioner, and her mother falls very, very, very sick. She is basically dying. She is like inches from death, and our main character still has a baby sister to look out for, so she decides to go in this immortal trials. Basically, any mortal person can go through these trials and attempt to win a pill of eternity, or basically a pill of immortality. And so she decides to enter this competition to get the pill for her mother. It's very common for people to die in these trials, and it's a very difficult journey, and somebody else, of course, is competing in the trials as well, and we don't know why he's competing, but I think there's going to be an enemies to lovers romance in there. We'll see. So she has to travel to the immortal realm to compete in these trials, but when she's there, she realizes that all is not well in the immortal realm, and so she tries to figure out what is going on. Next up, on March 18, we have Sunrise on the Reaping, and this is by Suzanne Collins because it is a prequel to the Hunger Games trilogy. So it actually follows Hamish's story from District 12. It is the day when his name was called at the Reaping and his life is turned upside down. So I know some people are not super excited about more expansions into the world of Panem, but I might actually read this one. I still haven't read A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. There we go. I still haven't read it. I'm not against reading it. I just haven't been in the mood for it. But Sunrise on the Reaping, I might be in the mood for a little bit sooner. So we've got a prequel, which is actually interesting because we are also going to get, I think it's this book as a movie in 2026 next year. So the final book coming out in March, on March 25th, is The Shadow Bride, and this is by Shelby Mahurin, and this is the second book after The Scarlet Veil. So it's the completion to this duology that follows a side character from the Serpent and Dove trilogy. So again, if you're invested in that, we have the second book coming out. If you're not invested, disregard, and we will move on to April. The only book I know of coming out in April is on April 22, and this is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. That's right, the next Emily Henry book. So this follows, obviously, two main characters. Both of them are writers, and they both have the opportunity to write the biography of this big famous person that nobody's actually seen in a year. So they're trying to find out what happened to this person. They're trying to write the biography, and I think it's enemies to lovers, or at least rivals to lovers. So that has all the tropes and all the things that I'm excited about. So hopefully this will be another 5-star Emily Henry book. And if you're interested what all my 5-star predictions are, I just posted that video so you can go and see for yourself. Just kidding. There is another book coming out in April. On April 29th is The Floating Worlds by Axie O. It's the first book in, I think it's a duology, but I'm not sure. And it follows another Korean legend, the Celestial Maidens. Our main character is an acrobat traveling with her adopted family, so found family right from the beginning, until one of the villages that they're performing in is attacked by a human-like demon, and she let loose her silver power that she has not let loose in a long, long time. And in order to find out what's going on with the demons, she has to go back to where she came from and was hoping to never go again, and her paths cross with a man who mysteriously wakes up with no memory of who or what he is. All he has is a sword, and so he does these random jobs just to try and scrape by, and so they cross on their journey, and they have to go to this demon-infested land to figure out what's going on together. So that is coming out on April 29th. Not in May. I have that written down wrong in my books. Now we have two books coming out on May 13. The first one I'm going to talk about is A Curse Carved in Bone, and this is by Danielle L. Jensen. This is the second book in the Unfated duology series? I'm not sure. It's the second book. I read the first one, A Fate Inked in Blood. I thought it was okay. It's Norse mythology. You're following like these children of various Norse gods who have different abilities and how that kind of affects the war that's happening. So I'm doing a terrible job of explaining it, but if you like Norse mythology, you should definitely check the first book out because the second book is coming out on May 13th. Coming out on May 20th is The Night and the Moth, and this is by Rachel Gillig. It's another start to some duology trilogy series. I don't know, all it says is book number 1 in the Stonewater Kingdom. I don't know how many there are gonna be, but I know there are going to be more, so that's important to note. But it is Rachel Gillig's new series, and it is a romantasy. So you are following your main character who has visions in her dreams, and she trades a decade of her life along with a few others, I believe there are 6 of them, to serve as prophetesses in the cathedral and tell people the horrible things that happen in their dreams as visions to warn them. And then when her 10 years of service are up, she has a home in the cathedral and she can live her life in peace. However, as it comes near to the end of their time of service, this young, hysterical, really rude knight comes to the cathedral, and he's also very handsome, even if he is rude. And around that same time, the prophetesses start disappearing one by one. And so our main character has to team up with this terrible knight to try and figure out what is happening to them and how to prevent it from happening to her. On June 3rd, we have our newest book by Elizabeth Lim, A Forgery of Fate. And this is a Beauty and the Beast inspired retelling of your main character who can paint the future, and she unintentionally becomes a con artist because her father has left her, her mother, and her 2 younger sisters to fend for themselves. And so desperate times calls for desperate measures, and she agrees to enter in a marriage of convenience with one of the dragon lords, who I think is kind of grouchy. I don't know. But it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so he's probably grouchy. Anyway, because he has answers about what happens to her father and can offer a better life for her, her mother, and her sisters. So, I love Elizabeth Lim's writing. It's romantic and beautiful, so I just cannot wait for this next book. And I believe it's a standalone, so yay! Not everything on this list is a series. Now, the last book that I'm going to talk about that is coming out is on June 10, and it is Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and this is by V.E. Schwab. Now, I actually have not read any of V.E. Schwab's books, but I have been meaning to. So I do follow this author, even though I haven't read any of her books. But this new one coming out on June 10th follows 3 different women in 3 different time periods, and honestly all I can do is read the synopsis. I'm sorry. It's literally just Santo Domingo de la Calzada, 1532, London 1837, and Boston 2019. 3 young women, their bodies planted in the same soil, their stories tangling like roots. One grows high, one grows deep, and one grows wild. All of them grow teeth. That's it. That's all we have. So it follows these 3 different women and their lives and how they all ended up buried in the same spot. I'm not super sure, but it is coming out on June 10th. Yes, June 10th. So those are all the books that I am super excited about coming out in the first half of next year. I do have a list started for the books coming out in the second half of the year, but like I said, I won't talk about those until it gets closer to halfway through the year so I can add to it, and it can be the most comprehensive list that I can do. Thank you all very much for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Comment down below if there are any books that you are looking forward to next year, whether I mention them or not. If I didn't mention them, let me know down below in the comments so that I can put them on my radar. And I also have Bookish social media linked in the description, like a Bookstagram and my Goodreads, that you can follow me there and what I'm reading and all that jazz. If you like bookish content like this, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell to be notified, as I am posting at least 2 videos a week for now. I might go down to 1 when school starts, we'll see. But yes, hit the bell to be notified when those videos go up. And again, thank you all so much for watching, and until I see you in the next video, happy reading!